In this video, we're going to take a look at a webinar platform called Webinar Ninja, which seems to tick all the boxes and looks overall just much nicer and much fancier than GoToWebinar, which is the main platform I've been using so far and the main one I'm going to compare it to. So, is Webinar Ninja a better choice for you if you want to do live webinars, or is it going to make you cry in frustration? Let's find out. Hello, I'm Shane from activegrowth.com, and this is my review of Webinar Ninja. And by the way, I will have links to Webinar Ninja in the description and post that goes with this video. And those are affiliate links, but don't worry, that's not going to stop me from saying some really mean things about Webinar Ninja in this review. So let's take a look at what it's like to work in Webinar Ninja. This is what you see when you sign up and sign in. It takes you to this dashboard, which right away looks quite pleasant and is pretty easy to use. So click on create a new webinar to start creating a new webinar. And this is one of the nice things, and one of the things that attracted me to Webinar Ninja is that right away we have a choice of different types of webinars that makes it look like, it's clearly kind of a thoughtful solution. It's not just like, oh yeah, you can do a webinar to a bunch of people. It's right away you have a choice between live webinars, automated webinars or evergreen webinars, a series of webinars so you can schedule out multiple events in advance, and a hybrid webinar, which is basically a webinar where the content of the webinar, like the presentation, plays automatically, but you can still be present to interact with people in chat and answer questions and things like that. So it's an interesting mix between the benefits of a live webinar and the benefits of a recorded automated webinar. So right away we have the choice between these different types of webinars. And I'm just going to do the most default live one to start with. So we call this demo webinar, and we set a date and a start time, and you can have free or paid webinars, which is great. So right on the platform, you can integrate with Stripe, so you need a Stripe account. But if you have that, you can simply set a price for your webinar and have people pay that price before they can register. So it's a very easy and directly integrated way to do paid webinars. So far, so good. I'm going to click on Create Webinar, and then it shows up in my webinars dashboard. And then here I have a few further options. So we have options here. Let's take a look at the landing page templates before we go into the actual webinar room. So I'll show you the registration page. You can create a default that will apply to all of your pages. And I think this is also very well done, because this isn't like a fully featured landing page editor or anything like that. But what you have is you have a choice of several different templates. These templates are all pretty serviceable. They're, not amazing, but none of them are like bad. They're not like the GoToWebinar standard registration page, which is just a bit sad looking. And it's easy to customize. So here you can see I can choose a custom color as an overlay on this image, and I can choose an image either from a gallery or I can upload my own. So really in just a couple of steps here, I can make this look different, and the same is true for almost all elements. So on the button, you can go here, change the button color very easily. And you can also do things like you can change the text, you can change the font and things like that. So in just a few moves, you have like a competent, passable landing page or registration page, and the same is true for the thank you page. I think this is the right kind of compromise. It means that you don't have to customize or custom build all your own landing pages, but it's also, what I've also seen in some cases, that you have kind of a landing page builder in a webinar tool that kind of tries too hard, where it's kind of just a half-assed landing page builder where you can do more stuff, but it ends up just not looking good. So here you can't rearrange anything on the page, you can't move stuff around, you can't add more stuff, but you can just customize what's there, and you have a simple functional page, and it's kind of a quick way to get a good enough result. And then we have a bunch of other options here. Most of these are what you'd expect. You can customize the email notifications that are sent out to people who register. There's some statistics you can integrate with email marketing services. Nothing surprising there. The next thing is we have to publish our webinar. And this one's a bit weird. You have to publish the webinar even if it's a private webinar. So if it's public, it will go onto the webinar directory where everyone can find it. If it's private, then it will only be visible to people you send the link to. So let's do that because this isn't a real webinar. And then the next step is any further customizations, any further features are going to happen in what's called the studio. So I'll click on Enter Studio to go there. Here I will choose the better webcam I have installed here, like this. And you can choose your headphones and microphones and then enter the studio. And this is where you can prepare your webinar before you even get started. So this here is the area in which you basically manage and run your entire webinar. And as you can see, we have several things here. We have a chat here where people can interact, and you have the option to turn this chat on or off. You have the option to share your screen, which I'm going to show in a moment. You can upload your presentation slides, you can upload a video, and you can change your layout, which I'm also going to show in a moment. First, I want to take a look at some of the more like marketing features that are in here. And that's primarily, we have questions, polls, and offers. So you can create a poll here. Let's do that right now. And this will show up for your visitors here. You can also create what's called offers. And this is basically where you can have a promotional link of some kind. So right now there's only one template with some, say, coming soon, but basically all you can have is you can have an offer with a bit of text here, which you can customize. You can customize what shows up here. You can customize this button where you can say something like get it now. So you can change the button text, you can change the button color, and then that's basically it. So in most cases, it would make the most sense to hide the offer in the beginning, and then when you get to the actual sales pitch part, that's when you reveal the offer, so it's not always visible. Now, this is what it looks like from our perspective. Another thing I want to show is the screen sharing, because there's one really good feature in here that I think is worth showing. So here, I'm going to go ahead and share screen number 2. And this gives me, as you can see right now, I have the live video as the main thing on screen, and then the smaller screen here showing the shared screen. And I can change that. I can make this go full screen. And I can go to change layout right here to switch between a variety of layouts. And here's an example of a 50-50 layout with video in one half and screen in the other half. And we can have basically different layouts depending on where the action is. And I think this is very good because this allows me to emphasize my screen or even only share my screen if the interesting stuff is happening on screen. But it also allows me to bring in my live video or guest live video. So if I have other hosts or guests on the call, I can choose who's emphasized. So if one person is doing most of the talking, is like their turn to present, I can make sure that they're large on screen. If something's happening on a screen or on the presentation slides, I can choose that. And it's a simple way to do that. I think this is important because it gives me, as the presenter, it gives me control over where the emphasis is and what I'm showing at what time. So this is what we see on the host side. I'm now also going to join this webinar as an attendee so we can take a look at what the attendee side of this looks like. In your Webinar Ninja interface, when you look at your webinars, there's this share option here. This gives you the shareable link that you can send out to your audience where people can register. So then let's do that. I'll pretend to be an attendee and a visitor in a separate browser here. I'll paste this link. This brings us to our wonderful customized landing page. And here I'm going to register, and it just gives me name and email address. And let's hit register. And then as you can see, the next option is to add it to a calendar. Plus it gives a countdown that shows exactly when this event is going to start. So that is all quite a nice sign-up flow right here. Once our webinar date comes around, that button will change to a join webinar button, and people will also get an email with a join link unless you change the default emails. So I'll click join webinar here on the screen where I'm pretending to be an attendee. All right, so as an attendee, here's what I see when I enter the webinar, and I'm sharing a screen, I'm sharing a website, and you can see the small version of the video down there. And here I have the chat, so I can enter chat messages here and everyone else's chat will show up, and I can hide this if I want to, and bring it back like this. All of the other stuff is down here. So here I can ask a question. So questions are separate from chat, and this is one of the good things, right? As the host, you can tell people, listen, in the chat, talk about whatever, but if you have a question that you want me to see, if you have a question you want me to answer, make it a question, enter it as an actual question, and that can kind of separate the general chatter from actual questions. Then the next thing is we have a tab with polls, and here you can see this is kind of weird because it's not that the poll is shown at a specific time during the webinar, it's just you can tell people to scroll down here and there's a poll to answer. And as a visitor, I can make one of the choices and I see the results. And then there's the offers. This offers tab is always visible and it just says no offers created yet. So if we switch back into admin mode here, you can see that this question has come in. You can see that in the polls, I can see that one person has answered. And in the offers, I can choose to show the offer. So let's do that. I'm turning on the offer now. And what will happen is that at the top of the video feed, it shows us this little kind of shy call to action. If you click on this, basically nothing happens. I think it switches to the offer tab down here, but it's just not obvious. So you'll have to tell people, okay, you have to scroll down and go to the offers tab, and then here's where they see the offer. So as you can see here, this is not great. This is, you basically have to tell people, okay, scroll down, tap on the thing, and then they see a bit of text on the button. I think this isn't particularly better than just posting a link in chat. But there it is, that is the offers. Now, another thing I want to quickly show is, like I showed from the admin side, I can change the way these feeds are displayed. So here you can see it just switches, and this is what it looks like on the attendee side. Another kind of quirk that's worth noting is that as an admin, I can turn off the chat right here. And as a visitor, as an attendee, I will just see a message that says chat is off, but the chat will stay open. And this is true even if someone joins a webinar that has no chat, so where chat was never active, they will see a big sidebar that says chat and the message at the bottom, chat is off. So you can tell people, okay, click on the thing to hide this, but it would just make much more sense if it was hidden to begin with. Another thing that is a bit mysterious on the admin side is that if you look at this here, there's a switch here. And you might be wondering, well, what is this? Can I turn off questions? Can I turn off polls? What's going on? Actually, what this switch does, there's no label for it or anything, but what it does is it simply hides the attendee count. So you can turn it on to let people see how many people are online, turn it off to hide that. It's just a bit strange, like the positioning of that and stuff is a bit strange, but that's what it's for. So this is an idea of what it's like to run a webinar in Webinar Ninja and what it's like to attend a webinar in Webinar Ninja. Final step is let's stop the broadcast. So on the admin side, I'm prompted and I can say, yes, this is the end. And then on the attendee side again, we see simply this webinar has ended. Unless you choose otherwise, a replay will automatically be recorded and will be available here. So when someone registers after the event has already taken place, they will just be sent to the same registration page, they will sign up and they will just be sent straight to the replay. This is what we see when we join a replay. So we see kind of a webinar room, much like the live webinar room. Strangely enough, we see a sidebar with all the chat messages from the entire event, but without any interaction. So you can't, on the replay page, you cannot add your own chat messages. And it's also not a chat replay. It just dumps all of the chat messages from the event into the sidebar for no apparent purpose. For a replay attendee, this is basically pointless. We can see the questions. And here's a useful feature, because if you answer a question, you can choose to answer a question, and it will add a timestamp to the point in the video where you've answered that question. So that's quite useful. And also, again, all the polls will simply show, including the results, with no interaction. and the offers, if you showed any, will be visible here. And you can time the offers, so you can choose to have an offer appear at a specific time in a replay. So that's an overview of Webinar Ninja and some of the things that are good and sometimes also a bit confusing about it. But there's also a fairly long list of grievances I have with this thing. And I'm going to list the most important ones kind of in descending order from the worst down to a bunch of nitpicks. So the first is there is a 2-hour limit on your sessions in Webinar Ninja. And so I was talking to someone at support. It's quite difficult to get clear information about this. What they basically say is just do your events for no longer than 2 hours, right? So it seems that your recording time is going to be limited to 2 hours. So even if you have an event that runs longer, it should be possible to run an event for longer, but your recording will stop after 2 hours. So anyone who joins the replay will not see the full thing. There might also be a hard limit at 3 hours, but I couldn't get a clear answer about this. What they're basically telling me in support is just don't do events that are longer than 2 hours. And I'll make a separate piece of content on this to explain this in more detail, but basically that means there's just less potential for you to engage with your audience, and there's less potential for like long, high-ticket sales webinars. You don't want to have a 2-hour session limit. There's just no upside. For me as the user, there's no upside to this. It's just a problem. It's just an obstacle. When I did a test event to a real audience with Webinar Ninja, the second thing that was really noticeable was that the video quality got really bad, especially in the second part of the event, in the later part of the event. The live video feed was just a pixely, blocky mess. And I'm not nitpicking here. Here's an example of what it looked like. So really, this was extremely low quality, and a lot of people in the chat were asking, you know, what's wrong? Is my connection bad? Is your connection bad? What's going on? Because the video quality was so bad, it would have almost been better to not have video at all. Now, I was streaming this from a setup where I am connected by wire. So this is not a Wi-Fi issue. I'm connected by wire to a very fast connection that can do a solid 80 megabits per second all day long. And just for comparison, this would be enough for a pretty crisp looking 4K stream all day long, right? This connection is strong enough for that. This is not a problem on my side. And interestingly, even in the replay, this is how bad the video looked. So this is why I basically placed the blame at Webinar Ninja. They are getting high quality video through a very fast connection, but for some reason, what you get is this pixely mess in the end. This can be a serious issue. I mean, the audio quality stayed okay. It wasn't like a deal breaker, but you know, that's gonna lower your engagement. That's gonna lower the enjoyment people get out of this webinar. And that can also cost you money, right? If people are seeing a pixely mess instead of video feed, they're much less likely to stick around. Another major issue I have with this is that a lot of the marketing and interaction features tend to be a bit of a letdown. So I had some idea of what I would get looking at kind of the marketing material. And if you tell me, you know, we have a webinar platform where you can do polls and you can do calls to action, you can do questions and answers, then I have an idea of what that looks like, but the actual implementation in Webinar Ninja is always a bit disappointing. So I can't create timed polls, right? I can't create a poll and then show that to the audience at a specific point in time, get their engagement, and then maybe make a point based on the answers I got. All I can do is I can say, hey, there's 5 polls below the thing, scroll down, answer the third one or whatever. And so it's just not a really powerful engagement tool. It's just like something that's tacked on to the bottom of the webinar. The same with the call to action. You know, I can't get to the sales pitch part in my webinar and then go, bam, it's in the middle of your screen right now, you know, click on the big button to buy the thing. No, I can tell people again, like scroll down, click on this little tab and then click on the little button. I mean, that's, like I said before, it's barely better than just posting a link in the chat and telling people to click on it. And then with questions and answers, even there, you know, there's no way to display the question on screen to show people on the webinar and in the replay, this is the question I'm answering. All I have is I have a list of questions. People can't vote on the questions either. There's no way to prioritize them. And I can add the timestamps, but that's it. So what we have in many cases is kind of a good idea, but poor implementation. Now, let me get a little more nitpicky here. There's some other issues, and another example of a good idea with poor implementation is that you can upload a video. It's not really upload, that's what they call it, but you can add one or several YouTube videos to play during your webinar. Now again, you might think that, oh, that's pretty good. I can maybe, review a video or comment on a video as I'm doing the webinar, but the video isn't actually played and sent out as part of your stream. Instead, the video is loaded on the client side, on the visitor side, as a YouTube video. And that means that, first of all, for people on iOS, it doesn't autoplay. And secondly, you can't do something like, okay, let's watch this part of the video and then pause and comment on what we just saw and then play the video. You can kind of load a video on people's screens, hope that they watch it, and then continue your webinar at some point. It's a feature that's there, but it's just not that useful. Another thing I want to mention is that in my testing, I noticed that sometimes the offers don't show. And I think you can only display and then hide an offer once. I think what happens is that if you show the offer too early, for example, you hide it again, and then you try to show it again, it won't show for your attendees. I think this is just a bug, but this can be so bad because on the admin side, it looks like the offer is showing. On the attendee side, nothing is showing. Everyone's going to be confused. And this is at the crucial moment where you're trying to pitch your product. So again, the implementation is just poor. And then there are just a lot of smaller nitpicks that I'm not going to go into detail on, but just as an example, on the registration page, if someone tries to register with a name that has a number in it, it will close the registration form and then show an error saying registration failed, your name can't have a number in it. And it's just well, why? If someone wants to sign up with their gamer tag as a name or something, who cares? Why are you stopping them from signing up to my webinar? So it just seems like it's carelessly handled, and there's many little things like that throughout the use of Webinar Ninja. So with that out of the way, let's also look at the pricing of Webinar Ninja. So it starts at $50 a month, or about $470 per year if you pay a year in advance. And that is for a room with up to 100 people and basically most of the features. And I think that is a fair entry-level price for a webinar solution. So I think that's pretty good. I also like that there is a tier for about $100 a month for up to 300 attendees. I like that they don't jump straight to 500 and a higher price, for example, because a 300-seat room is a room that is quite difficult to fill. You can have a pretty thriving, information business, course business or something like that, and a pretty sizable audience, and a 300-seat room is going to be enough. So I think it's good to have this kind of in-between and not just jump straight to 500 and a higher price. What I don't like is that the hybrid webinar, which is one of the more interesting features in Webinar Ninja, is reserved for an even higher price tier, starting at about $150 a month. So once again, they make a big fuss about how great the hybrid webinar feature is in the marketing material, but it's not available to smaller creators or anyone on a smaller budget, so who cares? I've mentioned this previously. I think this is not a good way to price a solution like this. To me, it makes sense to pay more for more seats, but just give even smaller creators most of the features. I don't see why you would lock something like this behind a higher price plan, but okay, that's up to them to decide. So if we look at the pricing and we compare it to GoToWebinar, I would say that Webinar Ninja is not exactly a steal, but it's definitely much, much more affordable than GoToWebinar. And it's fair pricing. I think this is a decent price to pay. It doesn't feel like a rip-off. So the pricing seems all right. So we've seen that there's some things that are really interesting and good about Webinar Ninja, and some things that I found very, very frustrating. So would I recommend this? Would I keep using this, and would I recommend it to someone who's looking to start doing webinars? Well, my answer is it's a strong maybe. See, the thing is, it's definitely not better than GoToWebinar, but it's also not worse, because many of the things I complain about in Webinar Ninja are either absent or also not very good in GoToWebinar. So if you're choosing between the two, you might as well pay less for a solution that has, its pros and cons, than pay more for a solution that has kind of equal pros and cons. So it's also not something, even though I found a lot of it annoying, it's not that I can just say, well, it's complete garbage, stay away from it. It might be a decent solution to start with. It's just too bad that there's so many things that seem so promising, but that are not implemented well. So if you're thinking of using Webinar Ninja, you have to be aware that the stream quality might not be very good. You have to be aware that many of the features they advertise are not really that well implemented. And you have to be aware that for longer webinars and for like high-end sales webinars, this is not going to be suitable. Because of its ease of use, because it has good integrations, and because it's quite handy that you have, decent registration pages without having to build anything separately and things like that, it is, I think, a decent place to start as a basic webinar solution. I also think that Webinar Ninja is a promising platform. So I think that if they pay attention to the issues they currently have, and if they keep developing this thing, this could turn into a killer platform in maybe 1 to 2 years. So it's definitely something I will revisit at some point in the future. Now, if you're watching this as I'm publishing it, I am currently on a quest of testing my way through every webinar platform I can find, and I will be publishing more of these coming soon. Also, if I'm already done with this and you're watching this later, I will put a link to the full kind of comparison review once that is done. So you can go there and find out which is the best webinar platform as soon as that is available. So for now, that is my take on Webinar Ninja. Let me know if there are any specific webinar platforms you think I should test, and if you've had other experiences with this or other webinar platforms. Let me know by leaving a comment below.